Tim, welcome back. We're here again. And, we've had several conversations around the human realities of leadership, and they've been really productive. And we've got a lot more coming up. And, you've got an interesting background because one of the things that brought us together was your workshop, your masterclass that you did a few years ago on empathetic leadership. And of course, I've written and I'm writing more books on leadership and the human qualities of leadership. And I want to ask you a serious question about the work that we're doing together, because it feels to me like performance culture, performative culture, performance is being pushed to the extreme, not only in media, but in culture. Productivity, optimization, using AI to do more with fewer people. What you and I have been leaning into in our conversations is building cultures where leaders actually listen and where people actually feel that they belong in organizations and leaders who are facilitating that and supporting that. And you've led large organizations, so you get the reality of having to perform and having to meet quarterly dynamics. Do you think that what we're focusing on and what our guests are really delivering on for us is performative, or do you think it's authentic?
My first reaction is it could be both, because when you're leading a lot of people, if you can't get them together, then I don't think ultimately you can have good performance at scale. So I do really think, look, if you're trying to build a great culture because you think that's important, you want people to be happy, you don't want to make people miserable, that doesn't get you off. So you want to, if you feel good, but yeah, you want to make the number. Of course you do. And I think, at least the way I felt about it, was that was part of our recipe for success, was culture, getting on the same page, letting everybody be free to think what they wanted. The mantra that we had at Initiative, which I started every email with, I started every new business pitch, I closed every new business pitch, was three things: care, point of view, win. And so, point of view was, we want to know what you guys think. Tell our clients what you think. Tell me, tell your manager what you think. Obviously care about our company and care about our clients. So I think they totally fit together. If you skip the culture part, I don't think you get the same performance.
So in that context, that's perfect. And we've been doing how-tos in all of our conversations.
Right.
When you go back to your masterclass, how do you balance, as a leader, what's doing right to get your quarterly results that you got to deliver financially to your CFO and to Wall Street, and also get it right for building an empathetic listening culture?
How do you get that right? Well, I mean, you do. I guess the way I think about that in your next question is, there is the revenue side, there's the cost side. So let's do the cost side first. It's less interesting. Yeah, I do have to be fiscally responsible. We have to be fiscally responsible to spend less money to get the job done. That doesn't mean I get off on cutting people. I mean, I don't mean it that way. It's just, let's be prudent fiscally. And then to drive the revenue, what is that? Who are we? How do we go to market? And so I think that all the parts of the empathetic leadership and growing people's careers and getting them to lean in more, maybe be comfortable taking risks, which led to great ideas, maybe be comfortable pushing the clients a little bit in a way the client loved. I mean, all that stuff is part of the revenue side of the equation, because the only way the challenge today is you need to make more money and spend less money. That's what when you're leading a team, especially when you have the P&L. It's one thing to lead a team, Jack, as you know. You can lead 1 trillion people, you can lead 8 people. If you're not responsible for the money part of it, then you've got half the equation. I'm not saying it's good, it's a lot of pressure. But if you have the leadership and you own the P&L, then you've got to worry about both cost and revenue. And I don't know how else to get it done unless you have a great team of people to help drive your revenue.
Tim, that's great. I mean, you've really described why we're doing Lead Human together, and why I think it's really important what we're doing, and the kind of leadership leaders who we're talking to. And one thing unusual today is you and I are doing this both from our respective in-home studios.
True.
And in a minute, we're going to transfer over to being in the studio together for our next guest. And I think it's a conversation we're going to have as we introduce our guest today that speaks to that very issue of how you navigate a human story, a human media story, and a story that in many ways value is built on emotion, as we'll talk about, when the deliverables have to be very impressions and performative based. So let's take it to that next stage, Tim. And thank you for your responses. I really appreciate that.
It's always fun to have the conversation. Yeah, we'll get to Jennifer. She and I, the virtual is interesting because it does add another element to the ability to be a leader. It adds a complication to it, adds a little bit of freedom, we could say, but it also adds complications. And I look forward to listening to Jennifer as we talk about all that. So why don't we head down to the studio?
Let's go.
Greetings, humans. This is Lead Human. I'm Tim Spengler, joined by my co-host, the visionary and author, Mr. Jack Myers. Each week, in about 30 minutes, we aim to prove that even though there's so much conversation about data and dashboards and AI, that the real competitive advantage in business today is not about better managing the machine, but about unleashing the human spirit. This is Lead Human. Jack, tell us about our guest today.
Well, Tim, I'm thrilled, and I know we've had conversations about Hispanic marketing, and I'm thrilled to welcome Jennifer Rogers, the Executive Vice President of Consumer and Corporate Marketing at TelevisaUnivision. Jennifer brings a unique blend of visionary leadership, creative insight into everything she does. And today, Tim, we're going to be driving into her journey, her approach to building collaborative teams, which is really something you and I are so passionate about, as well as the future of both marketing and our economy built around the Hispanic audience.
Yeah, huge section of the country now. What I find fascinating is that she's been at that same company for 15 years. How many regime changes there's been. And as a
change in ownership also.
Yeah, right. Ownership
time.
and senior management. How to survive, and I don't know how many we're going to find out, how to survive in a senior role under new management all of the time. So I'm curious to understand that skill set because it is one we can all learn from.
And I think more and more people in our audience are dealing with that reality consistently of changing leadership and changing management and changing philosophies. Right. And cultures.
Right, exactly.
So this will be a good conversation.
Yeah. Look, so excited to bring in Jennifer. Jennifer, welcome. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Jack and I are in the Acast studios. You are down in sunny Miami.
I am. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure. And we're part of the Acast Creator Network, and we're love to be part of that family and love to have great guests who want to, have a conversation about leading human. And let me jump right in, okay? First question, kind of a grounding question that we like to ask everybody right off the top. And it's a question not about what you do. It's a question about who you are. So as a person, tell us, Jennifer, who are you? What's it like to be you?
Starting off simple. Really, as a person, I will say big picture, I appreciate the simple things in life. I am very grounded in my relationships, my family, my friends, being really what matters. And I've always oriented my life around that in every way, right? So, I feel like the days of, separating the personal from professional are are kind of gone. And I think that about my professional life as well. What I really value the most as I look at my career are all of the connections that I've made, the opportunity to continue making them. And I really think that life is about the small moments. Um, you know, love vacation and those type of experiences, but sometimes it's more simple than that for me. It's taking a moment to have a cup of coffee, having a great moment with, one of my kids, watching my daughter play soccer. It's really important to me that I do the right thing. And that means a lot of different things in my life. That can mean helping my parents with something. It can mean showing up for a friend who's going through a hard time, or it can mean staying late with the team, trying to work on changing a graphic for an upcoming presentation. But it's really about meaning in the small stuff.
I like that. That's great. I think we've got the right guest here today. So I know this is going to come down to a people answer, but I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about this. So you've been at Univision, now TelevisaUnivision, for around 15 years, right?
I just had my 16-year anniversary, actually.
16 years.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, no, it's quite a tribute. And especially given the ownership changes and the number of regime changes in that 16 years. How many, regimes have you been under in the 16 years? And importantly, so for the audience, what are the tips to be successful when you have a regime change and you've got to start over with a new boss and you're quote unquote not their hire, but you've managed to succeed and thrive through? You'll tell us how many, but I know that there are ways that there are tips to doing that. Tell us about that too.
Great question. Well, I think from a CEO perspective, it's probably been about 6, but from a boss perspective, I don't even know that I could count. I think I've had, probably 5, 6 bosses in the past couple of years alone. And what's interesting is even before I was here, I feel like my career has always been marked by change in leadership. And I think, for all of us who work in this industry, that's the new norm. And I really think it comes down to, a couple of main things, but the big picture one is you have to always be focused on the current strategic goals of your organization, right? Change is something we all know happens. But generally speaking, when there's a regime change or a boss change, it's because there are new ways, that we're trying to approach the marketplace, that we're trying to grow. And I've always oriented myself and my teams around, okay, you don't want us to do that anymore. You want us to do this? Great, let's go. Opportunity to learn something new. And I think that when I look at my career as a whole, and in particular, okay, why have I stayed for 16 years? Beyond just passion, of course, for the audience, passion for the brand, it's also that change is good. It can be scary. I know people get scared by it, but for me, I don't like to be bored. And one of the reasons I've always been able to just grow and shift and change and really learn from whatever new boss I might have is that I'm open to saying, okay, this is a new perspective. Resistance never works. I've watched many people do it over time, many people entrenched in thinking a certain thing. And, for me, there have been times where I might not agree fully with the new direction, but over time, I usually find myself understanding it, find myself learning new things. So I think that's just what I would recommend. At the end of the day, it's interesting. When I work for someone, I'm there to make sure that those goals are delivered on, right? For my boss, for my company. But it's really about delivering on goals. And I think if you have that mentality, then as things shift, you just shift.
So when you talk about goals and talk about responsibility, your responsibilities include both corporate and consumer marketing. you have a responsibility internally to manage, navigate, and support revenue and sales. You also have a responsibility to your audience to represent them through TelevisaUnivision. How does the world perceive your audience? So you have a unique responsibility in media to represent not just an ad sales or marketing organization, but to represent the culture of the Hispanic audience as well. So how do you navigate that kind of dual reality that you're unique in facing in the industry?
So it's really been, it's such a privilege to get to do that. I think it's been so interesting for me because sometimes I joke that I think I've had every marketing job at our organization. So I have a unique perspective on that, right? In understanding, the audience, the passion points of the audience. It's such a huge growth market in this country and for advertisers. And so, for me, it comes down to one, everybody says data, but data. You have to understand your audience, but also understand your purpose, your role, your position, what we do for them. I think TelevisaUnivision is a very unique place. Obviously I have a lot of colleagues in media, but this place is different. And I'll tell you that there are so many people who I've worked with or they've been a part of my team who didn't just go and get a job after college or didn't decide to switch industries just because I saw a job and I was interested in it. They come here, they seek it out the same way our audience seeks us out for content and connection. And people work here for love of the brand because it has a bigger meaning. So for me, whether or not I'm working on a consumer campaign, something that I might have done in the past, let's say we want to have someone tune in to the latest novella or our micro-novella, our new, content option that we're giving our subscribers to VIX, for example. It's not just about thinking about the consumer piece, but also understanding the business applications to that. Why might a brand benefit from connecting in with us? And so since I've had both sides of the coin in my career, I can't really separate them, right? So everything that I do, if I'm working on something for our upfront, I'm always thinking about the consumer, even when I'm in a conversation with a partner.
So a follow-up to that point, Jen, I've had the honor and pleasure of working with a number of your leaders over the last more than 2 decades. And the common thread in the ad sales community is that the emotional connection that Hispanic audiences have with not just your content, but with your brand, your equity, and with your advertisers because they're advertising with you. That's something that's really unique to the Hispanic audience. It's been proven by so many different studies on emotional connections, but yet our industry does not necessarily value emotional connections. I've been seeing somewhat of a cusp of a turning point, I think, where advertisers and brands are looking more perhaps at the beyond impressions, beyond cost per thousand to emotional connections. Do you see that? And how do you translate that reality of the emotional connection to advertisers when they are looking to you also for their negotiating and pricing?
Look, I think to your point, the data's there. It's been there. We obviously are entrench ourselves in that. And there is just such a connection that our audience has to seeing creative that maybe in Spanish language or maybe in English language, but still connect with culture. And I think we really focus on being great partners, right? In one, helping to educate and inform to those that might, want access to data information, to creative consulting. We make it really easy for advertisers to move forward. I think there is a pendulum shift, like you're like you're saying, I think that, we went from, years and years and years ago, where everything was all about, it was creative, and it was, when you were looking in the legacy linear world,
Right.
everything was, how many product integrations can we get? And then the pendulum swung, right? And we went into programmatic. And I think now there's a little bit of a correction there, right? You have to reach the right audience. So, that's why we've pursued some interesting partnerships, like our partnership with Roku, right? We know we need to reach the right person, and we have a household graph that allows our advertisers to connect directly with the Hispanics they want to reach. But then there is the emotional piece, and I think, at the end of the day, if you've reached someone but you haven't engaged with them, marketers know there's not going to be a next step there. That winning those hearts is still important, having that connection. And I it's why I've worked in this market for so long in my career, because you can't the audience really is a dream, in terms of just getting to do things that matter with Hispanics respond to these connection points, to creative, to heart. And I've seen it again and again and again, whether I've seen it working with an advertising partner, I've seen it working directly with a consumer, on, CSR, right? I do a lot of corporate social responsibility, in my past role. And, when you're at a financial literacy workshop and you're reaching out in the Miami market, and you have people come to the studios because, they want to learn, and we're a trusted partner, right, through Univision Contigo, that's beautiful. And I think that because I know that works, it's easy for me to help advertisers understand why it can work for them.
I want to underscore something that you said, because yes, there's too much of a focus on the who, using data to get to the who. But you said it's coming back around, and you said because of data. So I think that's really interesting, right? So it's data around content and context to drive results. The first thing we were like, we now know who the audience is, we're done. Our business is done here. Yep. We nail the who and we're done. And you're like, no, we got that. We got that covered. Now we've got data around content and context also driving business results. So it's data led, even though it's quote unquote right brain-y stuff. But now we're getting all of it together, which I just love. But I just wanted to underscore the fact that you said it's coming around to content and context, but you said because of data. Data isn't just to come up with the who. It's also the where and the when, right? That drive the next thing. I think that's cool.
Absolutely.
And in that context, you talk about content, context, and the expansion of the brand. And you mentioned VIX, you're in streaming, you're in audio. Talk about how you're reaching audiences through different platforms.
We're really trying to be not only wherever the audience is, but to make sure we're continuing to focus on innovation, right? Hispanics are 20+% of, our United States population, but 25 to 30% of Gen Z, right? So we have a sharpened focus, on Hispanic youth, and how can we continue to innovate our content? How can we continue to innovate how we reach them? And obviously when we launched VIX a few years ago, we just wanted to expand and to provide new offerings, right? VIX wasn't for us just about saying, okay, well, we want to launch a streaming service and let's call it a day. It was, okay, what are things, our news platform, right? If you think about Univision News, hugely important to our audience. We're going to be coming to, midterm elections. They come to us for their knowledge. But at the end of the day, when you have a broadcast network, you're going to have your newscasts and a couple of programs. But we launched a 24/7 news channel that's wildly successful for us on VIX. And that's because we knew there was an appetite for more. So I think that's really where it's the same thing we were just talking about, right? With this idea of the data and the content. And we are hyper focused on really understanding our audience and needs, and also, making sure we think globally, we look out for partners, for new things. I mentioned, micro-novelas, that's a format that was doing really well in Asia, and we saw it, and we created something unique and different that had never been done here before. So it's about using our past successes to motivate us to continue to succeed.
And the name of this podcast that Tim and I have launched is Lead Human. You talk about how people come to work there because they're passionate about the brand and the audience you deliver. What is it that made you passionate about the brand, about being a part of the Hispanic marketplace?
So, interesting question. When I was in high school, my older cousin,
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yep, I'm from Philadelphia. I've been in Miami for 20 plus years somehow, but still go back to Philly quite a bit. And my cousin was older. He had gone abroad to Spain when he was in college and told me about it. And I remember even then in high school, I was like, okay, when I go to college, I want to go abroad. So I did. I went to University of Pennsylvania, and then I went my junior year abroad to Sevilla, lived with a family, and just loved it. And even though I had already picked communications and marketing as my major, I ended up adding Spanish. So I double majored. And it really just changed me in terms of mentality. And so it drew me to, my first role. And I've just stayed with it since. I don't think I would have, if you had asked me in my 20s, do you think that you're going to work in, Spanish language media for the bulk of your career? I would have probably said you were crazy, but I love it. I've just loved every part of it. I started off working in New York, moved to Miami, and it's the same thing here. I just have always connected. I've always felt a connection that maybe is unexplainable, but I feel like it really is explainable when I talk about like the things you were asking me in the beginning about who I am as a person. I actually think a lot of those things like connect really well, certainly with our employees here at TelevisaUnivision.
It's interesting that you made the choice to headquarter in Miami versus New York, and certainly the Miami brings you front and center not only into the culture of the corporation, but into the culture of the Miami audience. But being from Philadelphia, which teams do you support now? Are you Philadelphia or Miami?
I'm still an Eagles fan.
Okay. Well, you got a ring. You got a ring, so
yeah, still Eagles, but I'll cheer for the Dolphins second. My kids are Dolphins fans, but they know.
Makes sense.
They know they still have to support the Eagles.
So Jennifer, 16 years. A lot of people feel like, and I asked you this at the beginning, but different aspect of the question. So a lot of people feel like, after 2 years, I got to get out of wherever I am to grow, to go to the next place. I don't usually counsel that. It's depending. But tell us, depending on your situation, but tell us give career advice around the staying at a place, from your perspective, the staying at a place versus the not staying at a place. What are the positives and negatives of being in one place for a long time? And, the people you mentor, how do you come at that? How do you come at that career question?
Very interesting question. Funny, I've actually asked myself this. I remember when I started here, and there was, I don't know, maybe 2 months in, there was a celebration of, employees who had been at the company, I think for 25 plus years. And I remember thinking they were insane. I really did. I was like,
exactly.
Who? 40 years? Like, are you out of your mind? And now I sit here laughing at myself as I, had my 16-year anniversary. And so I have actually asked myself that question. For me, I think the why is a little bit of what I talked about earlier. I feel like I have changed jobs within the same organization and in an industry that keeps changing. So I think for me, I recognize that I'm an achiever. I like achieving, and I like change, actually. Even though sometimes you have to remind yourself like you're up for it, but
counsel others. How do you counsel others about this?
On that, I think that you have to know, I think, what I don't think there's any one advice. I do think that I've been lucky enough in my career that even here, like when I've stayed at this company, I do feel like the company has evolved so much through those different leaderships that I've gotten a lot of different perspective. I'm very externally focused. So I think for people in their career, there isn't a one size fits all. I think there are pros and cons, like you said. I think sometimes it's good to experience completely different types of companies or different industries. I think you bring unique perspective. A lot of times, I think it's about how you bring it all together, right? Like when I think about teams that I manage, I think about where does having some of that internal, that real internal knowledge like really help versus hinder. I think it can do both. I think that you have to be really mindful of yourself to not be saying, oh, we tried that 4 years ago and it didn't work. Oh, why do we do this? Oh, we do it because we've always done it. Like those are to me, the big watch outs. And if you find yourself saying those things, you probably need to go. You need to go somewhere else. But if you're still learning and growing, I think you should continue to do that as long as that can be the case.
And as Tim pointed out, you have so much experience with different leaders, both at the boss level, but also at the ownership level, at the most senior level. What are the qualities of leadership that you believe have been most effective in the organization and that you would like to personify yourself?
So I think clarity, that would be for clarity around priorities. I think that, look, there are always probably 25 different priorities, but I think really being focused on, okay, these are the 3 things that will mark us being successful. And anytime I've had a leader who has been really clear about that, it's just much easier to actually to push against the things that aren't needle moving, right? I think we do a lot of things, and especially when you work in marketing, it's all about almost what you're not going to focus on. Sometimes that's more important. So clarity is one. I think the human piece of things, I like to work for people who know that everybody has a life, that, friends and family and health are important. And I really focus on leading that way as well. Because, we don't work in a regular old industry, right? Like, we do things where we work late and we work weekends and we travel and we do all of these things where we give so much of ourselves that I think that human side of leadership is very important. And I know for me personally, and I try to do it with my team, there's an openness and an empowerment, right? Like, so my current boss, Tim Natividad, he actually said to me, yeah, I like to, empower and hold accountable. That to me is my favorite. It's like what I like to do with my team as well. Like, here to get the best out of people, but not to micromanage. So those are the 3 areas I would highlight.
I love that. And I was actually going to go there next about that third one. So you, with all your experience there, when you have a team under you who comes to you with a strong opinion about something they want to do that you don't think is right, talk to us about being a leader at those moments, how you do that. And I know there's not one size fits all answer, but in general, how do you approach that? Being a leader, you've got people, you want to empower them. You just don't know if that's right.
Well, I definitely as a leader tend towards more openness. But usually what I find in those situations, it's actually not dissimilar from many things. People tend to talk in tactics, right? And lose sight of strategy. So I always try to bring things back to strategy. So if someone comes with an idea and I don't feel like it fits, it's generally because perhaps I haven't had the same exposure to information. I try to really make a discussion and round out the rationale. A lot of times someone might have a great idea and I say, okay, but think through this more and come back to me. Or perhaps there's a different situation we might want to do it, but I'm usually pretty open with feedback. And that's why I've loved managing creative teams over the years, because you get some really, really wild things. And there's always those times when we can do it and say yes. And I think that I've built that rapport and trust with the team to know that if I'm ever pushing back on something or saying, no, I don't think we should really do it, I really try to have that thoughtful conversation around why.
It's the value of having that North Star that you point to. And if the strategy, if the tactic isn't pointing to that North Star, you can find a path toward responding in a way that's grounded in your future, in your focus, in your ideation of what needs to be done as opposed to what someone may want to be done. And on that context of need versus want, I know you want the market to believe in your audience. You need the marketplace to believe in your audience.
Well, the marketplace needs to believe in my audience for themselves too, right? We're their growth engine.
Exactly. So in your marketing, how do you connect that need and want to the realities that may confront that are often just cost-based?
Well, I think that we're uniquely positioned with that here. We have SE Studios, and that's our in-house studio that is really there for that explicit purpose. I think that, I get how if something is new, it feels daunting, and we really focus on making it easy for our partners. I think we're unique in that. I know everybody says that, but we go the extra mile with everything that we do. And so I think a lot of times when we work with our partners and something feels scarier than it really is in reality. And I think that we constantly focus on showing that. We show that in our case studies, we show that in our presentations, and we're trying to. I'm actually trying in my role now leading up industry marketing to really be thoughtful around how we show up, right, at events, how we show up in the marketplace, so that we can help partners understand how easy we can make it for them.
You really personify in your brand equity and your messaging why advertisers, brand marketers should lead human. Because if they lead human, it points them to you, to your brand, to your audience.
Absolutely.
How do you do that in the context of the power that AI can complement? So how are you as a manager with your team around their people, and then there's AI, and is it a threat? Is it a complement? How are you getting that dynamic? I know it's early days for leaders in this, I don't know, it's a conundrum, it's an opportunity, whatever it is, the reality of, man and machine. How are you leading your teams? What's the approach inside either you or the approach inside your company's culture on this?
It always makes you think of, video killed the radio star, right? But
right.
we sit here with still super successful radio stations, right?
1981.
I think that technology, always helps. You just have to use it right. So, I'll harken back even years ago when we're first looking at, generative AI and graphic design. I was leading at the time a big graphic design team, and there were those who were really nervous and worried, it's going to take my job. And really, when you dig in, you say, okay, well, this task that you were doing that used to take you 3 full days to do can now be done in 15 minutes. Okay, but was that value added that was taking 3 days of your time? Like, no, now you can spend time doing the things that AI can't. So I really have that mentality with the team. I think first, a lot of times there's just basic, not even basic, probably sophisticated training that you need to do to help teams understand that. And we're making a real concerted effort to do that at our company. 1, 2, I think that there's all sorts of applications, whether it's in creative, whether it's in messaging. And I think that it really comes down to using technology smartly. I don't think AI is any different than that. And I feel that, if at the end of the day, and I know everybody, not just in our industry, but everywhere, the concern becomes jobs and will I have a job? Well, you just have to innovate to, if the job can be done by something in AI, then what's the job that can't? It's that human aspect again.
I love that line. What's the job that can't? I love that line. I think we're going to leave it there. It's been a very fun conversation.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you
for being a guest.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me here.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If our conversation today with Jennifer made you think or feel differently about leadership, please do share it. subscribe to us wherever you listen, and help join the movement with Jennifer, lead human, because we are still out to prove in a world where machines are more and more important, but the human edge is really the most important one. This has been Lead Human.
Perfect.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Bueno.